Now that you've written down some ideas from your life and your life experience, it's time to start thinking about how you'll put it together for the project. So, I wanted to show you some student work examples, and this might help you think about how you create this. What you want to do is pick just one of those experiences and then push it to the level of a sort of cinematic image. If you looked at some of the other artists that were inspiration for this project, that will also help you. So here's a student work from this class, and her memory was about a really bad birthday party. And I always think it's really interesting if someone's using a memory that they don't put a child in the picture, but they put themselves in the picture. So this is a self portrait, but experiencing the memory of that time. I think that sort of time traveling could be really interesting. And so, in terms of location, she just went to a park, which is where her party memory, which probably wasn't that good considering how this picture looks. And then she just went to a party store and got props, and that was pretty straightforward. But she did plan it out, and in the coming weeks, we're going to actually have a discussion about props, location, even poses and influences that you would have for this project. So that's one. Here's another one. This was interesting because it was two twin brothers, and the memory was just so much about how they were compared, and yet they were different. So you'll see they're eating two different types of cereal. And one is my student in the class, and the other is his twin brother. Here's one where a student had his mom, and he wanted to talk about that she spent too much money shopping and that she was going to sort of find herself in a bad situation. So I think this is a pretty funny rendition where she has all of her shopping bags, but she's on the railroad tracks here. So getting family and friends, particularly parents and siblings, to pose in this project is really helpful. This was one where a student wanted to do it about a memory of Elf on a Shelf. And at first, she wanted to use just that Christmas motif. And I had told her that putting a person in the picture makes it so much more interesting. So she ended up wrapping up her little brother in wrapping paper as if he was being held hostage by the elves on the shelf. Make of it what you will. Okay, next. This student actually was a criminal justice major at Chaffey, and so he wanted to do sort of a crime scene kind of thing. He got these costume items and really played out a sort of Sherlock Holmes motif. Oh, this one's so funny. And this one will give you an idea of how you might take the series of 3 pictures that are due. So in a lot of these examples, I'm not showing all 3 pictures, but I thought this one was pretty funny. So the memory was that when she broke up with her boyfriend, every time she would go out with someone new, he would call and get in a fight with her to try and ruin her date. And so this is an image showing that. And then this is the one that I think is so brilliant. So she's meeting her new date, but she's handcuffed to her old boyfriend. So I think that's really funny. And then finally she gets unchained to him, and now they're walking down the street. I think it would be even funnier if they were actually at a restaurant or a restaurant setting and the other boyfriend was under the table or something handcuffed to her. So you can, take this as far as you can in terms of location. I think that location should be a major player. 50% or more of your picture might rely on location. This was one where 2 brothers used to play a video game that seemed so real. It had to do with soccer, obviously. And I love that they brought the TV onto the soccer field and then was showing that they're their video game playing was becoming like real life. So that takes some, innovation, thinking about how to get a TV onto a soccer field or where you could even do that. This one was more of a Harry Potter kind of theme. Do you know, I don't even remember what this one is, but I think it's such an intriguing image. First of all, the location, I could really see this in a movie. Remember, we're shooting in color, and so the color pink is so great here. But I feel like the dynamic of the two characters has so much of a storyline and narrative in it. I also love the lighting that just happened to be, on the person. My guess is that they knew someone at that donut shop, so I don't think you could walk up to any store and just do this. So you've got to think about your resources and locations that you know you have access to. This is a really nice one, kind of like almost like a heist movie, art forgery movie or something like that. And you'll notice in a lot of these, people went to thrift stores to get their costumes. And so you could see the suits a little too big on the one student back there. But the art canvas was actually blank. They just bought a blank canvas. But there's something so wonderful about this one in terms of even using the depth of field, and the location is really nice. This one was a classic Rebel Without a Cause, and they chose this one because they knew they had those cars. So that's what I mean about using, props and things that you have access to personally. This one is really amazing in terms of its creativity. I think it was more of a dream. And so they set up, and it was a self-portrait. They knew they had this really interesting old Singer sewing machine. And so they created this kind of tethered image to the past. And this one's really funny. That's my student in the picture in the front, and that's his mom behind him. And it was an argument that he had with his mom because he applied to school, but then he only kept it in preview. He didn't submit it by accident. So he had to wait a whole nother year. But I just think their expressions are so funny. Like, they're just doing such a good job of acting. And they just went to the local Claremont College to shoot that. So in other words, it's important to note that you don't have to go to the place where the memory happened. You just need a location that really works for the idea. This one is very dramatic, but it is in the local landscape. This one is a kind of Mean Girls memory. This was a memory of actually sleepwalking. And so she had this where she was about to walk into a swimming pool, and then she went in. This was also a memory of a bad birthday party. And so there's rather dramatic images when you use an adult in that kind of situation. This one had really strong content. Her parents were getting divorced, and so she felt like she was being pulled in different directions by each parent. So she posed in front of each of their homes and had the parent tug on her arm. This is her dad pulling her the other way, and then this was their divorce paper. So those were the 3 images that she turned in. So that's kind of a serious one. This one's funny. So he was always getting in trouble for feeding the dog at the table. And so he literally played this out. And the images were pretty funny here. This was a serious one where his dad had been deployed for a long time. And so he felt disconnected. And he would write to his dad. So here they are. I thought this was a great image and really good metaphor for being separated. It was just a fence and their clothing. And then it was about them reuniting. And this is about too much computer use. And you can tell this one is a comedy. So he's got that computer video game. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a piece of fishing line on the flip-flop being thrown at him. This was one about, she said her parents were always on their phones and didn't relate to each other. And so she set up this kind of romantic picnic for them, but then had them sit back to back, ignoring each other. So she created this kind of symbolism. And this one, the student wanted, well, they actually had a underwater encasement for their camera. So I think deep down they really just wanted to use it. But again, they went to a thrift shop and got these, suits that they didn't mind getting completely wet. And they created these rather dramatic images. This one was about a 3-year-old's birthday. And the story was that the grandparents did not show up for the birthday party. And so they got their daughter to reenact it. And she's such a good actress. You can, as you see these, there's 3 pictures. And all they had to do is go to a party store and to recreate this. And she showed her sadness in them not coming. And it's interesting, like the candles burning down. This was kind of a couple that would get really serious about playing card games to the point where it seemed almost real, like a real standoff. But I think that's a really nice image, just in terms of composition as well. This was one where her mother hated her boyfriend. And so she was always trying to get them to break up. And I think this is so funny, like he's outside the door. You can tell she's almost laughing, though. And this was one, my student was the one in the middle here, and he had been working at Barnes & Noble, and it was closing down. So they made this image. I just love that they're wearing ties. And this one, her husband, she said, was an extremely picky eater. So she dressed him up in the babies, put him in the high chair, and had him look like he was being picky about eating. And I find this one so funny. Here's one about a love affair. This one, she said her sister was always like a princess and wouldn't let anyone enter her room. So the framing here, using the door and the props, were also important. You really have to let your model in on what your concept is. So you kind of want to show them some of your preparation. This was one where her son would never do his math homework. He was always playing video games. And so here she is trying to convince him to do his math homework. And then I thought this image really kind of brought the idea together. So that's it for the examples of student work. I hope that helps you, understand what you can do and how important the planning is for this project. So we'll spend the next week planning, and then as soon as you can, start shooting a first draft. Remember, this is your final project, so go all out. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions.